Did you happen to get my revision 15 minutes ago?
No, but let me load it up.
Thanks.
He's quick.
I got to learn how to do this, so I don't count on you to drive it. I mean, I think it's a pretty simple thing as sharing content, but I'm going to make that a personal goal of mine to not just have you have to share all the time.
I don't see anything since last night. Could you send that one more time?
Oh, maybe it got stuck. That's okay. It's we can use what we want.
Gotcha.
It was just I made one or two changes. Well, good morning, everybody. I feel like we're spending a little bit too much time together, but I guess that's okay. But hopefully I'll do less talking today and more listening than I did last night. So, but we'll get into kind of a recap from last night. It's one of the early on agenda items. So, Josh, if you don't mind going to the next page. Roll call. Is there anybody not here? It looks like we got a pretty full slate, which is awesome. I knew Gary couldn't make it last night, but Gary is here today. Frank, welcome, Frank.
Thank you.
I'm ballparking this. It looks like Rob might not have joined us, but or is he there? And I don't see him.
Well, I was really looking forward to being there last night and today, but I've got COVID, so it's better that I stay here.
Oh, sorry to hear that. How are your symptoms?
Oh, just mild. I've got I have the vaccine and the boosters, so it's just like a bad cold.
Yeah, cool. Well, I hope it goes smoothly for you. Anyway, getting back to the agenda, so I'm sure Rob will join us in a minute if he's not here, but just wanted to say welcome to Frank Brown. I think Frank, from my perspective, again, having been on the board as well as on the budget committee for several years, and it's one of those things that will be moving to working closely with the budget committee. So I think he brings, he's done a lot of architectural work, so I think he brings a wealth of experience and a different point of view to this committee. So welcome, Frank, and I look forward to working with you. He's already asked, helped me on a couple things already with regard to spending and things like that. And again, good morning, Rob. And again, I just want to thank Mo for all of his work. We worked pretty closely together. He did a lot of things that I didn't do, that might have not have seen in the background. So I'm going to miss working with him, but I wish him well. Let's go to the action items, Josh, on the next slide. Again, I cut and pasted. It's not as big as I'd like, but in general, we completed all the action items that we committed to from last meeting. And it was a lot of good work, a lot of good teamwork. So the town hall meeting we had last night, which again, we'll talk about in a minute, really good collaboration with the communications committee and Josh, of course, got that done. And all of you helped last month sort of set the objectives for what that call was going to be. Do a little bit more work on inclusion. Helen, we're going to get into that as a topic today, including transparency. Should we do it? Should we not? What does it all mean, et cetera? Follow up with the board of directors. We did follow up with them on the question on how to measure values, review attached situation analysis. So we did send out a situation analysis twice. Got a little bit of feedback the first time, minimal. And then we're going to talk about that again today. And then we did change the date to this is officially a February meeting. So I'm going to try to push through another meeting later on in the month. But these are the primary action items. The big thing is continue to work on the situation analysis and get the town hall set up and finished. And it took a little bit of effort, but a lot of good teamwork on that. And then click the button one more time, Josh. I just want to thank Amy. One of the things that came up in the last meeting was the fact that we put in a recommendation to include SurveyMonkey for another year in our year-end report. And Amy followed through with that, and basically with John agreed to commit to another year of SurveyMonkey. It's really minimal for the value that it brings. It's about $1,400, $1,500. So, Amy, thank you for taking that on. We didn't really ask you to do that, but it's good knowing that that's there and that we can continue to gauge, input from the property owners, for another year or so. So thank you for that. Now we move into some of the other, again, I'm going through pretty quickly because I don't know why, but going back to the agenda. So survey, this is where, just want to have everybody just talk about their, I know all of us couldn't attend, but just, your thoughts on survey town hall. I'll start out by just saying that I really appreciate Cheryl's input and driving towards simplicity. It's something I really needed. And she worked closely with me and as did Josh to really get it down to a simplified presentation. The other thing I would say is I know all of you couldn't make it last night. For those that did, I really appreciate you guys being there to support the effort. But I'll open up for open discussion and just what you thought about it. And I guess we'll go from there. So I don't know, Jenny, you were on the committee and moderating. Your thoughts?
Well, I thought the presentation was excellent. You did an excellent job. I was hoping we wouldn't get diverted into things like streetlights and that kind of thing. It's one of my, I guess it's one of my peeves about the process, and it's sort of in my mind what should be, strategic plan should be used for, not necessarily like when people are evaluating, do we need to, to me, it was just kind of an unfortunate diversion about bricks and mortar that didn't talk about strategic planning specifically, and that was that's just how it always goes. Yeah. So I don't mean that as a negative. It's just how it goes. I would have maybe tried to steer away from that stuff a little bit, but aside from that, I thought it went well. I thought it was interesting that you had 200 responses that wanted 6 p.m. on midweek evening and 15 people showed up, but that's also the way that it always goes. It was good.
So we got into the weeds a little bit too much, and that's not what a strategic plan is about. So I would agree. Any other thoughts? Anybody? Just I don't know what the best way is to have people jump in, Josh. What would your recommendation? You run Microsoft Teams more. Is it raise their hands or call on people? What do you think, Josh?
If there's hundreds of people, it helps to raise your hand. But if you just have a small group like this, I think you can just call on them. I think Jenny raised a good point, though. People say all the time they want nights and weekends for meetings, but then we have nights and weekends and they just don't come.
Yeah.
That's just the way it's always been.
And of course, this was not a controversial type of thing. When there's something that is, gets under folks' skin, then they're a little bit more engaged. When you're in crisis mode, it's a little different than when you're just sharing information. But at the same time, everyone wants information shared. So that part to me is always disappointing because, I'm kind of doing this stuff for a while now, and you put so much into it and you expect a little bit more engagement, but it just is what it is.
I was very glad with the small turnout, very disappointing, but the 2 newcomers that came on and shared their thoughts and ideas, they had some really good input. Nice to see some newcomers coming in being very positive, knowing how to use some of our Ocean Pines resources. So I was very glad to hear their input, and I think they really appreciated that meeting. I think it was a good job done by all.
Yeah. We don't have to continue. Rob has his hand up.
He's muted. Yep.
Yeah, no, I got it. Yeah, to echo a couple of Jenny's comments. Yeah, Bernie, it was a great job. I mean, you really put together a great presentation and well delivered, and Jenny and Cheryl did a good job with the moderating. I had one thought about, we were talking about the participation, and I may be way off base here, but just in the conversation I had when I got home last evening. I just wonder if the platform has anything to do with it, because I view Microsoft Teams as more of a corporate platform, whereas Zoom kind of, you're the homeowner. And I'm just curious as to whether or not how many people have Microsoft Teams. The only reason I have it is because the real estate brokerage where I hang my real estate license has it. I don't know if that impacts anything at all. You guys, Josh and maybe Amy participating more on the Ocean Pines Association level. I just wonder if that people like, oh gosh, I don't have Microsoft Teams, I can't get on this thing. Would that or not? I have no idea, but that was just a conversation I had post the meeting last night. That thought,
We've had pretty good turnout for board meetings. We'll have 40, 50 people on a weekday showing up for board meetings, sometimes even more than that. So the platform, I agree that Zoom's a little bit more of a standard household name. We use it Teams because we have an office subscription. But it's been pretty successful all around, I think.
And so that kind of nixes that, but just a thought I had. And then lastly, to Jenny's comment about things kind of getting in the weeds. Yeah, I agree that kind of happened, and we were asked questions that I think folks were looking for us as decision makers, when that's not really we're not controlling the purse strings on putting lights in or whatever. But I think that might be going back to communication. Those folks being new, clearly understanding what the role of the strategic planning committee is.
Yeah. Good one.
That's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Jenny, you brought up a great point last night about the academy, and that goes to communications. The fact that we had 2 brand new people attend, I think a lot of people need information and education about the community. And if we could publicize, Josh, the academy more, I think that would be really helpful.
That's in our plans, and we're working on a new segment right now. So we'll definitely do that. Thanks.
There's another hand up there. I can't see who it is. The screen's so small, but go ahead, just jump in.
Well, I'll take. Go ahead. I'll take the next shot. I think the thing you could read into last night was, you get a small participation. It's typical, and it's some of the reason why you hear complaints about things that aren't facts, because people don't get all the information. But it also is a good sign because, as was pointed out before, people tend to show up in large numbers when they're angry and mad about something, or when there's some issue that they want to address, that they're concerned about. And the fact that there was only a small turnout, even though I think we publicized the meeting, and if you had an issue, you might want to jump in on the strategic planning meeting just because you want to put your thoughts in on what we ought to do for the future. And so I think it's a good sign that we're healthy, and it tracks the satisfaction levels, I think, of the survey.
Yeah. Thanks, Wes. Yeah, I mean, my feeling is we promised to do this, and part of our is right at the bottom of our survey, so we had a commitment to do it. Again, we're being recorded, and I don't want to show this to show up in the papers, but our expectations were low participation, and we exceeded those expectations. On the positive side, which I tend to be optimistic, it was almost like having a mini focus group. So you had a small group of people, and the people that were there were engaged and participating and things like that. So that's the opposite side of that. Had some good ideas come out of it. So again, it's, it is what it is. But again, I just appreciate all of you being there, and all the help that we got to pull it off. I think, is it Stuart? Are you there? Is that you? Has a comment?
I had a couple suggestions, and I really don't know who to bring it to, so I thought I'd bring it up in this venue. Our racket center. I think we could actually advertise it in a way that doesn't cost any money. We have the golf course rents racks in the different hotels throughout town. I think I mentioned this to you, Bernie. and they rent racks. I think they're like $500 a rack. We can piggyback off of golf's information and put the racket center's information as a brochure or as any specials and things like that for free. All you got to do is print up the brochures or the flyer to put in the rack with the golf's and stuff. And the other suggestion I was thinking about, over at the Swim and Racket Club, we have a food facility that's not being utilized at all. And I spoke with Rick Krasnick from Big Ricky's hot dog stand, and he wants to rent that and as a staging area for the farmers market and to serve food at the pool. I don't know if that violates any issues with the Matt Ort group or not, because it's not being used, but it could be a small revenue generator in aquatics. And right now, they just use that area for storage, and it's being wasted. So that's my 2 cents. And I really didn't know who to bring it to, so I thought I'd spitball it with you guys.
Yeah, maybe send some of those ideas over to the racket committee and the aquatics committee to work on. But I appreciate you bringing them up. And thanks for being here. So again, just, any other, we don't need to kick this, around, but again, great team effort, great team, showing up, those that can make it. And we move on to our next thing. I mean, we gave the community.
We've got 2 more hands up still.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, my hand, do I have to take it off? I already spoke. Do I have to hit it again? It's Helen.
Yeah.
There's also Gary Miller.
Yeah, Helen.
Hit
Gary.
me off.
You got to hit it
I
again.
just wanted to follow up on Stuart's comment about the space at Swim and Racket. I am on the aquatics committee, and we are going to be looking at doing something with that at our next meeting coming up later this month. So I will take that information, Stuart, to the aquatics committee. I don't know what will come of it, but I'll at least bring that up so that people know what's going on.
Do you want Rick Krasnick's contact info? I can get that to you, Gary.
Sure, might as well. This, of course, will have to go to the board and
Sure.
talk with Matt Ort and all of that bit. But sure, send me the information, and that way at least I'll have it.
And you're on aquatics?
Yes.
I'll find you.
All right. Thanks.
I apologize. I missed your hand, Gary. There's so much going on my screen. I have no idea where to look. I probably just need a change the view on it. Anybody else there, Josh, that you could see? We good?
No.
Let's move on. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, but if we end early, that's gives us plenty of time to review what's on the agenda here. So, situation analysis, draft review feedback. This was an agenda topic last time we sent it out, but this is such a critical document that I just wanted to take time again during this meeting, not to go through the whole presentation, but to review it. And the first thing I would say is this is what we shared last month about kind of a work plan for the year. So deeper dive on survey results we completed, finalized situation analysis. Didn't quite complete that yet. I would say after today's meeting or in the next week or so, we'll have completed that. Conduct a virtual town hall, check that off. And then once we finalize the situation analysis, once this committee is ready to release it, we will release that to the board, probably via work session. I think there's going to be, Amy will work with you and the team to schedule these work sessions. We're not quite ready yet, but I see them as, 1 to 2 hour meetings that this committee will facilitate. And we'll start working towards goals and objectives and strategies. And I say concurrently because what I'd like this team to do is also be going through the same process. Our next meeting will be focused on, okay, we did all our work. What should our goals be? And that's what we're going to spend our time on in our next meeting. And I just want it 2 different looks. I want it to be the board strategic plan, But I want this committee, who's closer to the numbers, closer to the work that we did, also to be working on that. So when we have the meetings with the board, we could say, have you thought about this? What about this objective? Our committee's recommending that, we consider this. So when I say concurrently, it's going to be Ocean Pine strategic plan. And again, I think Rob, you brought it up before. We're not the fact guys. We're not the budget guys. We're the process guys. Strategic planning is a process, and we're trying to drive this process to get to this plan. Anyway, a couple work sessions that will be coming up. Probably more likely late March, definitely in early April, depending on the board's availability. And I'll definitely make myself available. And then, you start going into the budget committee and future budgeting process by June, and then town hall. We'll have another town hall where we'll have a strategic plan recommendation and, allow people to voice their opinion. And then once that's finished, we'll take it to the board as a final recommendation for approval. And then we'll start to implement the budgeting process for the following fiscal year. But this was our work session. I thought there were some people that weren't here last time. With Frank being a new addition, this is kind of like what we all agreed to was kind of a work plan for this year. But the important part here is that we'll be working concurrently. We'll work with the board. We'll work in this committee to basically make sure it's the best plan that we can come up with. Comments or questions? Okay, the next slide, please. The slide that I added was, well, this is again from my Hershey days, and where I taught strategic planning to mid-level managers. And interesting enough, it was so at both Kraft and Hershey, what they did was they implemented training for strategic planning. So they trained the executives, and then the executives trained the departments and managers, so that basically the importance of strategic planning went from the top all the way down to the bottom in the organization. And I was one of those that were able to teach the mid-level managers on the importance of planning and things like that, and having a SWOT analysis and coming up with what your goals are. So it basically allowed it to filter down. But we've had this arrow at the top on the situation analysis. We're very close to. We're going to talk about conclusions and implications today. Next step would be the goals. So just a good reminder of where we're at in the process. Next slide, please. The slide I was going to add, and one of the slides I was going to add, is just the value of a strategic plan and what it can bring to an organization. I think, just for some of the newer people, there's a lot of benefits to a strategic plan. It allows you to say no to certain things. It allows you to focus. It allows you to drive better results. It gets everybody on board with, rowing in the right direction. But the other one I was going to have in there, because there's a lot of data that we've collected. And the quote was from Edward Deming that basically said something like, facts without data are just an opinion. So we have a lot of facts, a lot of data in that deck that was sent out. And again, anything that we come up with ideally should, in my opinion, should be driven by true facts and not just opinion. And we've done that. I'm just saying that was the slide just to remind ourselves, like, why is there so much data in this deck? But anyway, so what we're going to talk about is each conclusion and recommendation that was in that deck, and then agreement on conclusions and particularly implications. Because you can look at a conclusion and come up with a different, one, you can improve the wording on it, but two, you might come up with a different implication. You might look at the conclusion and come up with a completely different perspective than I had. So consider what I put out there and what we'll share in a minute as a draft. And, and something that we want to be crystal clear with. What's important, and the reason I want to spend time on this is, once you get to implications, the goals that the organization, that Ocean Pine should be developing, are crystal clear. Like these need to be so tight that anybody would look at this and say, obviously, this is what our goal should be. So that's why we're going to spend some time on it. I did have one extra slide I just wanted to share that I'm working on. Next slide, and thanks to Jenny for her help, was property values. And I might have mentioned this casually last night, but While we didn't ask the importance of property values in our survey, and maybe that was a lesson learned. I was talking to somebody, one of my friends that lives in another area, actually has a property in the Villages, and said the most important thing to their property owners is their homeowner value and what that is. So with the help of Jenny, I put a 10-year curve on for Ocean Pines, and Ocean Pines has grown at about kind of stagnant for several years. It seemed like when I moved in, it went down and then it was stagnant, but then recently it's up, and it's up significantly over the past 3 years. So it was running about 4.5% over a 10-year period, mostly driven by the last 3 years. But over the past 3 years, we've grown at 11.6%. Sea Colony was at 11.5%. Interesting enough, Bayside values have actually declined over the past 3 years. Don't know what the drivers are, but it's sort of tied in with, we benchmarked these two homeowners associations. We looked at what was different, and I thought it'd just be interesting to look at the property values on that. And maybe it doesn't mean anything. Jenny, I guess I'd ask you as a realtor, is this the best way to look at it? Looking at average annual closing prices, what the house is sold for?
Well, I think it's a fair assessment. I was thinking a little bit about Bayside, and I know that probably some of their new, and I'm not a Delaware licensed agent. I'm just looking at the data because I have access to it. But I obviously it's close enough that I kind of see a little bit of what, and I know with new construction, oftentimes there are sales that are not put in the multiple listing service. So that could be part of it. But the other part of it could be the type of home that they're currently building, and the other thing with Ocean Pines, the last 3 years has been very interesting all the way around in terms of real estate, but higher end homes are definitely selling more, which does skew that average selling price.
Yeah. And I put a note at the bottom just as a caveat. So I don't know if this is truly representative. Like say Ocean Pines is putting in, and they are putting in, 100 townhomes. That might drive the average price down a little bit. If they're putting in a new section of higher end homes, it would drive it up. So
exactly.
So I don't know whether we'll use this or not, but I just wanted to check on it just to see how we're doing. And maybe it's location, isn't location, and we have a better location, as does Sea Colony. But I just thought I'd share this with the team that this may be part of what's included in the situation analysis. I had another question, Jenny. What was it? Anyway, we'll move on. I just wanted, this was the only addition we had to what the deck that was sent out. And thank you, Jenny, for your help on this. It was really helpful looking at this data.
Hey, Bernie, I've got 2 questions.
Yeah.
Is part of the reason the value of the Ocean Pines houses has gone up? How do we relate that to the amenities and the golf course and some of the things that make Ocean Pines desirable?
Yeah,
I can probably pull Worcester. I'll tell you what, when you look at Worcester County separate from Ocean Pines, the way I look at it, because I do sell in both Ocean City and Ocean Pines, and Ocean City and Ocean Pines are fairly reflective of one another. But when you get outside in rural Worcester County, or however you want to call it, southern Worcester County, it is very different in terms of the levels of increase. It has increased, but has not increased as exponentially as Ocean Pines has.
So Jenny, I hate to ask you, but maybe we just look at total Worcester County.
I can do that. It's gonna be harder because there's gonna be so much data to pull it. Because the reports I pulled were fairly easy. This might have to be something we export to Excel and manipulate in Excel, because I'll have to think about that a little bit more in terms of pulling the whole county. I can pull generic because my company does that, and that's pretty easy. In terms of when I'm working in Ocean Pines or Ocean City, I don't look at the county because the county's numbers are different. And I also remember, and I know who to ask this question of. At one point in time, there was a generic percentage number that was used in terms of giving value to the amenities that the homeowners association has versus a similar home outside of an HOA that did not have those amenities. And I want to say it was like a 10 to 15% value difference in the home itself, but I'll have to ask someone to refresh my memory on that, because it is a conversation I've had before, and there is value in the amenities, and there's a number on it.
Yeah.
It might just be asking the tax assessment folks, but there's someone else I wanted to ask, another realtor who looks at numbers like I like to look at numbers, and there's actually a number on it.
Yeah. Great question, Gary.
Okay. The other part of the question, and later in the proposal that you've got out here, it's very obvious that Ocean Pines assessment is substantially lower based on home value, amenities, and all those other things that go into it. When you compare it to Bayside or any of the other communities that are around, and one of the big issues that we have here in Ocean Pines is anytime any of the board members or anybody else talks about our assessments, the population gets very upset if they talk about raising it.
Yeah.
Now, we just had a rate decrease, which I personally think is ridiculous because we've got an awful lot of maintenance that still needs to be done. But one of the things that I personally think is important for this committee is to emphasize, based on all the information we've collected, what a great deal it is to live here. And the fact that if the assessments do go up a little bit, it's still a heck of a lot cheaper than any place else around here.
Yeah.
So,
That value proposition, that's what I can, from previous strategic planning experiences, we called that a value proposition, and every year during the annual meeting they do this great little breakdown that says this much goes to fire, this much goes to police, this much is your amenities, this much, and it's a little teeny thing that we could use, I think, in our, but again, I'm not sure if that's necessarily part of the strategic planning's role. It's more of a communications, it's more, to me, I'll be quiet now.
well, and I agree with you, but one of the things that they don't do at the annual meeting is compare Ocean Pines with some of the other communities.
Yeah.
It's one thing to look and say, okay, well, my assessment is going to these particular things in my community. It's another thing to understand that that assessment is substantially lower than other places in Worcester County.
Yeah, but it's also very hard to compare apples to apples, because just about every community includes different things in the assessment. So a lot of places, like my place in South Carolina, all my amenities, including my garbage, are included in my assessment. Okay, so I got the roads, and they have street lights. I got a pool, I got a racket center, I got a fitness center, and that's all. And they pick up my garbage, and it's all included in my assessment, which is far less actually than Ocean Pines. So you got to be a little bit careful with that, because you have to make sure you're comparing, apples to apples. When you do that, you got to know exactly what's covered in every place. And yeah, we're probably, my guess is we are lower because we're the biggest community. We got, how many, 10,000 units, and that spreads the cost, over a larger number of folks, compared to, say, a community with, 1,000 or 1,200 homes. You'd expect that they would pay higher. So it's a little bit of a tricky proposition, to do that with credibility.
And lawn maintenance is huge.
I think what Wes just said was one of our big takeaways from benchmarking, that, it is hard to compare different HOAs. We're different communities. We're laid out differently. We have different amenities. So to compare one HOA against another isn't that simple. But I hear what you're saying, Gary.
Yeah, we're going to move on. This was just an added chart, but in reality, going back to what Gary was saying, we have more amenities than any HOA that we looked at, other than the villages. Okay. And when we looked at peers, and thank you to Helen for looking at, I'll call them peer HOAs, which was Bayside and Sea Colony. Similar number of properties. I mean, they might have varied by 1,000, but they're not 1,000. They're closer to 8,000 properties. They're up there. I don't know. The numbers are in the appendix. But we have significantly lower HOAs. Apples to apples, significantly lower HOAs for what we get. And it could be a communication. I think there's a lot of things in a strategic plan. We need to communicate this better. We don't have to change anything. We just have to do a better job communicating it. So, but anyway, I want to move on because the next section is actually even more important. I just threw this out there. It's the one slide you haven't seen yet, and we'll continue to work on that. I think your question, Gary, about the value of amenities will be interesting to get to that. What does that provide? Let's go to the next slide, Josh. And this is going to be a building slide. So we're going to look at each one of these individually, and I'm going to try to be quiet and let you react to anybody that disagrees, particularly with the implication. So benchmarking, the first thing we did in looking at other, go ahead, click again, Josh. One of the conclusions from the data we collected was when compared to similar HOAs, Ocean Pines has lower income. So we're not the richest community compared to Bayside or Sea Colony. We had minimal growth in population. I think Bayside was a newer development, was growing a little bit faster. Sea Colony was relatively close to us, with many residents paying HOA fees, 2 HOA fees. So one of the very unique things was there's not many other HOAs where you're paying 2 different HOAs. You have your Ocean Pines fee, and then you might have your condo fee. In Ocean Pines. We also have more amenities and more waterfront property with what I'll call a fair HOA fee. So that was one of the conclusions. The implication that I came up with that I'd like this team to either tear apart or disagree. Go ahead, click it, Josh. Is we must continue to invest in our unique value proposition while keeping HOA assessment fees increases as low as possible. So the survey said, it's a key priority for them to keep the HOA fees. So again, this is what the implication was. Any thoughts, any word improvements on that? Or again, like I'm just going to be quiet.
Hey, Bernie, I've just got a curiosity question, if I may, to start with here, and maybe shame on me that I don't know the answer to this, but I'm not impacted by the double HOA fee. My part of the community, I don't have that. I'm curious, are those pretty consistent in terms of the additional charges, or they vary greatly? I'm wondering what the average additional fee is.
They vary greatly. They absolutely vary. Well, so because they're all different, like Marina Village Townhomes, they're a separate homeowners association. So you do pay some dues for common area maintenance, but you still have to get your own flood insurance and for the most part, take care of your own roof. Osprey Point and the Point condos have significantly, like Osprey Point's condo dues are $525 a month. But that includes your exterior building maintenance, your flood insurance, and you still have to do your own doors and windows, but it's a dramatic difference. The Interlinks is different than and lower than the Point or Osprey Point. There's the ones that saw, they're all different, and they're condo associations. So that money does not come to Ocean Pines. It goes to those individual associations to maintain the condo complex. So they're very different. They all have different amenities, like the park. The park pays an extra, but collectively, I think they pay just over $3,000 a year, but they get their yard maintenance, the grass cutting and that sort of thing. And the use of their clubhouse that has the indoor pool and the fitness. And so that money doesn't come back to Ocean Pines, and it varies greatly.
Yeah. It's just it's a fact that we're unique about that. There's not that many other associations that are like that.
Well, see, I think I'm not sure that that's actually like Glen Riddle. Glen Riddle has townhouses that are separate associations inside of Glen Riddle. So if you own a single family home in Glen Riddle, you pay an HOA due. If you live in the various condos that are over there, townhomes, you pay more for different things. The maintenance of the buildings, the building insurance, and those sorts of things, and they're relative. It's very similar to having an Osprey Point or the Pointed Ocean Pines condo, and I think that Bayside is similar, and I think that Sea Colony is similar because there's condos, there's houses, there's townhouses. Like for example, in Ocean City, there's Sunset Island. There's condos, there's townhomes, there's single family homes, and they all pay different dues for different things. So I don't think that's as unique as.
So how do we change this? What do we do to change this?
What do we do to change it?
To change what's on the pager. That's what we're trying to get to. We're trying to get to a document that we kind of agree to. I guess I said it's unique, but maybe it's just bringing awareness that there is many residents. I'm not sure if it's 15, 20% of residents pay, two separate, one condo fee and one HOA fee. But I think when we talk about our HOA fees is $1,000, well, that's in addition to maybe somebody else paying a condo fee of up to $500 a month on top of that. So I just want to get to something that, do we agree? We don't say unique on the left-hand side. We just bring it to people's attention. And then on the right, the implication is, based on the facts, we want to continue to drive what we have, but try to keep HOA assessment fees as low as possible.
Yeah.
And be specific that we're talking about the HOA only.
Yes.
Yeah. And since Jenny did make the point that there was additional fees, they don't come back to the association anyway.
Right.
So it's kind of it's an issue, but it's a non-issue to our discussion.
For our purpose, we're not talking about those condo associations, and those are completely separate choices. Somebody chose to own a condo and pay different dues. That it was a choice.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that education, Jenny. Thank you.
Bernie, do you maybe just want to take out the fact that some residents pay 2 HOA fees and just jump to Ocean Pines also has more amenities and forget the 2 HOA fees?
Yeah, that's
so. On the implication, I'm not sure what particular words to use. A value proposition, I'm not sure everybody's going to understand that.
I agree, and I didn't know how to say it myself. It's kind of the value proposition is everything that Ocean Pines has,
right?
From A to Z, yeah, and why people live here. So
you might want to use the words community profile. So that invest and value proposition for me if I was an uninformed homeowner, I don't understand what we would mean by this statement, because I wouldn't have the knowledge of what value proposition are you talking about, and what does it mean to invest? What are you if you're not gonna, I would define those terms more layman like.
So maybe just say our unique community.
Yeah.
Oh, I like, we must continue to invest in our unique community profile. Because I think when you're talking about value proposition, that you're talking about what you pay for in terms of what you get, right?
Yep.
And that's what you're saying when you're saying that when you're reading keeping the homeowner assessment fee increases as low as possible. So that's your value statement of the value proposition words.
Let me throw this out. We just must continue to invest in our community while keeping HOA assessment fees as low as possible.
Yeah.
Simple.
We want to invest in infrastructure. We want to continue to maintain or upgrade our amenities.
Yeah.
So just say community.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think if the only other thing you could do to really define that even more is, what do you mean by invest? Where are you investing and what do you mean by it? Because remember, our survey response was that they didn't want new amenities. They want maintenance of amenities. So do you want to put in there, we must continue to maintain and, I don't know. We're going to have to look at structural upgrades as we move along, because if we don't, we're not going to grow. And we do need to have some sort of percentage of growth a year, whether it's in economic feedback from the use of amenities or something. We've got to beat inflation. So I would just define and invest a little bit more.
Okay.
Maybe just invest in upgrades and maintenance. Just throwing out words here.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think Rob brought it out earlier about later on we say what we want to spend our money on. So I don't know that we have to. I think the point here is, we have a great community. It's a great value. But we need to invest. Later on, we say where we're going to invest. So we'll look at that, and if it doesn't show up later, we'll say, upgrade and maintenance and get into all that. But we don't need to be real specific on just what the implications are yet. I mean, in your goals, you want to state where you're going to invest and your strategies. But on an implication, it's just, hey, this is to Gary, your point about awareness. It's like we got a really fair investments, but people want to keep them low. So, what do we do? How do we do that? This is the type of discussion. I'm not married to any of these words, just to be clear. We put a lot of information together, and it needs to be this needs to be the committee's implications, not my implications. So good discussion.
I think you can keep the word unique with community, because I think the community does lend itself to the use of that term.
It is,
our unique community value or whatever else, however you're going to phrase that.
Okay. Let's go through. We might not get through them all today, which is fine. Maybe we'll set up a little separate subcommittee to look at this stuff a little bit closer. But next one, Josh. This is all again under benchmarking. Ocean Pines is the largest community in Worcester County. We are less diverse, older, with slightly higher education and higher income, and a lower percent of renters. This was in looking at us versus Worcester County. Kind of what we came up with. So I forget what Josh, if you don't mind to skip to the implication. I'll just let you read that if you can see it. It's a little wordy. I'm open to any suggestions. Again, this is on the survey. Nobody really, it wasn't one of the highest, responses that we need to leverage our, political clout and things like that. But just from a strategy standpoint, we need to make sure we're getting our fair share or more. But go ahead, Stuart.
I was thinking when you say we continue to improve our diversity while leveraging our size, we have over the last couple of years a lot of younger folks and families moving in, and I think we should aim our efforts at engaging them to be more involved in our community. A lot of folks just go to work, they have no clue what goes on here. Half of them probably don't even know all of the amenities that are afforded, and I think we should aim some of our target audience to the newer folks that are here. I think Jenny, I think if I'm not mistaken, over the last year or year and a half, we have over 1,500 new families these 1,500 houses that have changed hands, and I think the potential to reach those people is a lot better because they're newer and more open, and I think that's something that we should aim our efforts at. This way, we could, that will in and of itself increase some of our diversity by bringing them into more activity within our town. Just my
You
thought.
know what might be an interesting segue there, and this would really, I think, be a communications thing, is, a new resident, that when you transfer the property, you have to get a HOA resale package. And there could be some kind of welcome sort of thing that introduces things perhaps a little better in terms of, Residence Academy activities that are available, that sort of thing. But I think I think you're right. I think there are more families, but I think our demographic is still, you can't ignore the demographic, and the demographic is still swayed to a slightly higher age group.
Good, excellent point, Stuart. But going back, Jenny, one of the things when we looked at the property values, one of the things that stood out to me that I didn't put on that graph is the turnover in houses in Ocean Pines are consistently 400 to 500 a year. And in those other HOAs, it's closer, even though they're similar sizes, they were closer to 140 to 150 a year.
That is interesting.
Why is it that Ocean Pines has 3 times the amount of turnover, which leads to Stuart's point, compared to other those other 2 HOAs we looked at?
I can't really speak to it because I don't work
Yeah.
in those other HOAs. So I don't know. I don't know, but I did notice it when I looked at the numbers. It's glaring. Mainly what I was thinking when I looked at it was, wow, I wonder how those people are making a living. But
that's right.
It's different. It is very different. It's dramatic. And if I remember correctly, and I don't know, maybe Rob, you were the one who did Bayside, were you? And wasn't there somewhere around 8,000 home sites there also?
Yeah, there are. They're in the ballpark of what we are. I mean, it's not like it's only 2,000. It's close.
Well, and then the other thing you can think of is most people own their homes for 7 to 10 years. Bayside's much younger. So perhaps they're not turning over yet. You know what I mean?
Well, the other thing you have to keep in mind is an awful lot of people bought houses in Ocean Pines as rental properties. So as they get older, or they decide that they don't want to continue in that business, they sell the rental, and what we have is permanent residents coming in and buying the rentals. So that could be one reason we've got more sales than other places.
Stuart, you brought up a good point that brought me back to an implication that we didn't include on another thing, that we actually have 3 times more turnover than those other HOAs we looked at. And what are we going to, why is that? What are we going to do about it? A couple more hands up. I'm interested to hear from other people on this. And I'll stop talking. Go ahead, Becky.
I'm going to share with you some wording that I located in the Falls Church News Press. My daughter lives in Falls Church. And although this wasn't one of our benchmarking communities, I was really struck by the article because the article talks about the mayor's developments and plans for 2022. And ironically, the priorities that have been set within that city, within a city government, include neighborhood flooding, safety, including sidewalks, traffic calming, pedestrian and bike safety continue to be major priorities. But the interesting comment here that goes with this second bullet is the following. We continue to re-examine our policies. So I thought that was an interesting lead in. We continue to re-examine our policies to ensure equity and social justice citywide. And this isn't social justice in terms of racial equality, but they move on to say, we have asked, we are putting a grant into using and promoting affordable home ownership. So that's another piece in there, that affordable home ownership is another wording piece that we might want to put in our tool chest, because we do have significant amount of individuals in Ocean Pines who find this an affordable housing community. Correct, Jenny?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why our income diversity here And our housing diversity here is very different than Bayside. It's different than Sea Colony. And that may explain some of our, as we move forward, it's going to explain why we need to keep our homeowner assessment fees as low as possible, because we're either on a fixed income on the low end or a fixed in aging, or a fixed income on the high end. And that varies with a lot of different people. And they received this city received a $9 million grant. It's paid by the state and federal grants to do upgrades for wider sidewalks, street trees, lights, crosswalks, etc. So I like the fact that we have in this statement political support for key concerns, because that's how we're going to access larger buckets of money.
Yeah.
So but how different is it us being a homeowners association versus a municipality? Because I know I will often, when folks are comparing, say, Berlin versus Ocean Pines, I will say your Ocean Pines dues are going to be lower than your Berlin city taxes. Right. So there's something there. You make a good point, but I don't know what that changes when you're talking about a homeowners association versus a municipality.
I understand what you're saying, but in the philosophy of it, if you say we can, instead of saying we must continue to re-examine our policies, or however you want to say it, homeowner policies or whatever, to ensure rather to improve equity and affordable housing and whatever you want, while leveraging our size in Worcester County to receive our share of money and political support for key concerns.
Do we have any control over that?
What do you mean control?
Well, to continue to improve our affordable housing and those kind of things. I mean, it's not like we're in the process of building housing, or we're in the process. We have the ability to specify that certain kind of homes go certain places. We're pretty much all built out. I don't think there's a lot of land left to develop. So I'm a little concerned about sort of putting imposing obligations, or suggesting that we impose obligations to do things that we don't really have any ability to do. Like, how do you keep your housing prices down? Housing prices are what housing prices are for existing homes. If you're a governmental unit and you have land that developers want to come and develop, you could say, well, you have to put in so many condos at a certain price. But I don't know that we have that that ability at all within our community.
Okay.
Yeah, good discussion. I'm going to be a little bit of a timekeeper here. This is tedious work. This is where the rubber hits the road. These implications will lead to goals. I would just argue that there's a fact on here that that's really important, and we're not going to get to all these, but we have a lower percentage of renters, much lower percentage of renters on average. Is that something we want to keep? I know there's a lot of talk in the papers or whatever that there's, we've considered this in the past, but I know if you ask the police, the higher percentage of renters and long-term renters versus short-term renters, but we're not gonna fix this today. I want to move on to some other topics on the agenda, but I want to finish out those people that have raised their hands at this at one point. Amy, you had your hand up. You've been very patient for a long time.
The only thing I would add is on the implications when you're talking about political support, I would add safety. So I would add funding for the Ocean Pines Volunteer Fire Department, because we have a lot of pull, and that would be important money, and we just received some. So I would put that in there.
Great, thanks. Gary?
I'm just going back to the wording on these two. Yeah. When you say diverse, are you talking about racial diversity? Are you talking about income diversity, age?
Mostly racial.
Okay.
We're a lot white. We're a lot wider, probably 5 times wider than Worcester County.
Okay, well, I assume that's where you were going.
Yeah.
When you start saying improve our diversity, I'm not sure exactly how you go about getting more diverse racially, and what that might imply.
Yeah.
So I was just curious as to whether or not using the term improve our diversity is the way you really want to word that.
Yeah, I didn't want to leave the fact without trying to say something. I don't have the answer either. I've been on diversity committees on different corporations, and the fact is, the more diverse you are, the more successful you are.
Sure.
But this is a community; it's a little bit different. I'm not sure how to word that, to tell you the truth. But and we're not gonna. It's a good point. I'm glad you brought it up. But we'll continue to work on that.
Okay.
I'm going to make a note of that. And again, anybody else on these two things, because there's a couple other topics on the agenda. What I want to do is, one, I'll ask you all to look at these again. We'll send them out, just these, for you to look at and give feedback. And I'm also going to I'm going to suggest another meeting next Thursday where we continue this discussion. You guys can look at your calendars, but this is, this is, it's tedious. It's hard work. But we want to finalize this, and we don't want to take 3 months to get the wording right. Ideally, you'd like to get this done over the next month. So, Josh, we can skip ahead. The next one you start to get into was community. Maybe they'll be a little bit easier to handle. Like, for example, safety. With safety being ranked #1 in importance by property owners, we must continue to invest in improving safety while also increasing positive communications. I might have said last night, we should have, what did Berlin do when they were voted the coolest small town in America by some magazine? Well, Ocean Pines was elected the safest community in America by Safecore, something else, but it's somebody that publishes this annually. We should have a banner out front that says, welcome to the safest community in Maryland. So we're getting into the weeds there, but my point is, it wasn't really much of a gap there, so we need to continue to focus on it, but also potentially increasing our communications. I think at the meeting last night, somebody suggested a safety column in our weekly newsletter. So doing things like that, don't need to get there yet, but broad implications. This is what I come up with. So we're going to leave this here, Josh, and just go to skip through a couple pages. This was one of. We have 10 conclusions, so we're going to skip over all this. Sorry, they were all building slides, but so 2 options. One is to look at this and provide written feedback, and I really would value that. 2, we'll have another meeting next week, targeting maybe Thursday at the same time, and hopefully just continue to work on this wording. Next slide, Josh. There's 10, so we got through 2. But we'll get there. Next one, Josh. Yeah, so back to the agenda. Turn it over to, again, I was going to sort of committed to not talking as much, but transparency. And just asking Helen, who did, and why Helen? Because she did a lot of the work on our values and came up with a really strong recommendation, and looking at other communities and what we included in the survey. So Helen, I'll turn it over to you for a couple minutes.
Yeah, going back, our discussion a year ago, 2020, maybe, I forget, was we looked at our core values, which are collaboration, accountability, respect, sustainability, and, I forgot, sustainability, and one more, testing. I have it on my respect. Oh, sustainability. Did I say that? Collaboration, accountability, integrity, respect, and sustainability. And back then, when we looked at those core values, we did banter around the possibility of adding transparency. And the committee came to a conclusion that no, maybe transparency was actually buried in several core competencies. Even our one core competency, integrity, we defined as behaving ethically, professionally, maintaining transparency. So the survey said that transparency was our key issue, one of the key issues identified in the survey. And just a couple things as I was thinking about this. Number one, I'd want to know, gee, why did you say that? Why did they identify transparency as an issue? Because when you look at what transparency is, it's open communication, putting everything out there. On the other hand, the opposite of transparency would be secrecy. And do we keep things behind closed doors? And my personal feeling on this, and open for discussion, Bernie, but based on, we had a member come on yesterday in the our town hall that, if you're looking at objective data, I think we're pretty transparent. Okay, the minutes are out there, the videos are out there, all the information is there, the budget, the 3-day budget meetings, it's all out there. When you're looking at an individual, how do you measure their transparency? That's a little difficult. You can watch a video and watch someone's reactions, how they work with the rest of the group, and are they holding back? Who knows? But my feeling is that we can certainly add transparency, open communication, maintaining good relationships. But my gut is, and I know it's a big buzzword, my feeling is not necessarily so. Although the bigger issue, like I said, is why did they identify transparency in the first place? What was going on to make them do that? So I would, Bernie, open it up to discussion with the group. Is there a need for transparency? Accountability implies transparency. Okay. Collaboration with that implies transparency. So I'll leave it there.
I think the whole election debacle was going on, and I think that influenced the answers. I think it affected how people were responding at that moment in time. Snapshot of community feeling at that moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The new members who were there yesterday, I mean, they know to access information online. They came to our meeting. The information is there. So I think they identified transparency as an issue. Maybe transparency wasn't really the thing. Maybe it was honesty, which is also buried into the core competencies that we already, have put out there.
Other thoughts?
Yeah, Bernie. My thought is that transparency, that term, is a buzzword right now. Everybody, politically, whatever, are using the term transparent because they want everybody to be truthful. They want to be able to see everything. And although we're doing that, Ocean Pines is doing that pretty successfully, keeping the term, I think, is important just because it's going to make people feel that we know as a group that we need to be honest and outgoing and all those other terms. So I kind of like the idea of keeping the term transparency in there.
For me, I'm fine with it either way. I'm just, saying that, just telling you what my observation is.
Yeah, and I agree. Everything you said is right on, but just because of the political climate we're in right now, probably keeping the term, in my mind anyway, is a good idea.
So adding it to our current values, yeah.
Well, anyone else? I mean, this is an important discussion.
If we look at the data and track records of the association, meaning the board, the survey results. So if we pull the data that we're seeing in the community that would guide us to say to keep the word or not keep the word, I would look at some of the data that we have and say we should keep the word, because there's a lack of trust. There's a lack of trust between the members of the community and key people that are working for the community. Whether that's valid or that's not valid, trust is enhanced by transparent and honest actions. And I do think we have a ways to go to restore the confidence in the community members, that they trust that the people that are involved in the association are working for them. And the more open that you can be, the better off I think we would be. Yeah. So I would look at the data that's out there to say, do we need to keep it or we don't need to keep it? And if you read the papers and you hear of, especially as a newcomer, you hear controversial issues in the past that have occurred, but you don't really understand it, then you know that you have to move forward with an open agenda.
Yeah. I see your hand up, Gary, but Wes, your thoughts? Yeah,
I think you keep the word. When I first became directly involved with Ocean Pines, I think that there was a general feeling, and it was certainly one that I got from the activities that went on, was that the board was as crooked as the day is long. And I think that there was a general feeling in the community. And if you notice, what happened was the community were voting out all the incumbents every time. And it was I mean, I think it was a general feeling inside. And when you look at some of the stuff that was done, all the money that we lost to companies that were associated with certain board members that put in sweetheart contracts that just screwed over the community, I think there was a valid basis, for the feelings that people had. I think we've cleaned it up a heck of a lot in the last 6 years, but I think that you need that, because those people that were here during that time, probably still have those concerns and those and those feelings. So definitely transparency, and I think that's why integrity was one of the big leaders in what's the stuff you want out of your board when we did the survey.
Sure. I'm going to pick on Rob. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, lots of thoughts. Some I will keep to myself, but I think Wes kind of summed it up there. I'm sort of on the fence, but yeah, when you look at the historical, some of the things that he was referring to, I think it doesn't hurt us to keep it in there. And some of the comments that you were mentioning, Helen, about the gentleman who joined our meeting last night. And the fact that we do put stuff out there about the meetings and whatnot, I think that fits more into more into the category of open communication as opposed to transparency. I think transparency is more of a subjective point, and I think it would be okay to keep it.
Yeah. Frank, not to pick on you, but you're another member of the committee that new member, but also a former member of the board. Your thoughts? You're muted. There you go.
Okay, now I'm okay. I'm here. Yeah, transparency needs to stay in there. Just historically, there have been a lot of things that have happened that nobody knew about, and there were some bad things that happened 4 or 5 years, 6 years back or so. And there's been a tremendous improvement, I think, in the way the board's handled things, although there's still room to go. Right now, I think with the current president, I think that's going to help quite a bit. I know her personally, and she is an upstanding person who has the right ideas as far as the way things should be done and be transparent, essentially. The other thing about transparency is that there's many opportunities for people to see what's going on at the board level. I think a lot of people don't take advantage of the fact that board meetings are available either online or in in person in some instances. Hopefully we're getting back to more in-person board meetings. So, but in general, I think transparency should stay in the wording of our core values.
Anybody else on the committee that I missed?
But then we'll pull it out then as a separate core value.
Yeah, Helen, I think we do want to look at some of the data that the gentleman brought up last night, because again, whether it's an issue or not, well, it was the number one issue. So there's something we
Right.
need to do about it. So what's the solution included as a core value? But it also could be just a big, again, the board has made tremendous strides. I mean, we just went to open board meetings, versus just videotape meetings. So we continue to make progress. We want to continue to get better at that. And again, last night was an example of being transparent. Nobody showed up, but we were transparent. I mean, your minimal people showed up, which I expected. You think Josh and I talked, we probably get about 10 people there. But we were transparent. We shared the results. We're going to post the results. We're being transparent. We didn't say nobody's going to show up. Let's not share the results. We promised to share the results, and we did. So, yeah, the consensus was, without taking a formal vote, that we'll keep it in there.
Mhm.
Let me check on timing here. We got, I want to make sure we leave time for open comments. Becky, sorry being squeezed a little bit here, but you brought up at last meeting that we should consider attending other committee meetings. And I just had as a follow-up that we should include that as a topic. So want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, and keeping along with the theme of communication and education that was brought up at last night's meeting, and also has been reflective as a result of the survey, I am just going to offer for your consideration a strategy, and we can defer the discussion of this, Bernie, until the next meeting. But it's clear that there needs to be connections among committees and between committees. And as part of the strategic committee, perhaps we need to create a strategy where we are reaching down into committees through either leadership or by attendance or by inviting individuals to our strategic committee to really focus on specific issues that are important in that area. For example, Gary's here that can support concerns with the aquatics committee, and we can create connection between committees in that way. So let's defer that discussion when we get to really objectives and strategies, because I think that's probably where it's best laid to be, so we can move on to open discussion and comments, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm sorry you got squeezed. That's
No, I think it's better placed when we
that
get.
was my life. That was my life in the corporate world. You get all psyched to give your presentation, and then could you come back tomorrow? Yeah, I mean, even and I saw somebody shared the 10 conclusions, or that we had last night on social media. But just even to share, what the survey results were on one page. These were the conclusions. What does that mean to your committee? What are you going to do differently? How do you start to plan differently? So there is some elements there. I mentioned last time, and I mentioned to you, Frank, too, is pretty soon we got to work closely with the budget committee about how to and I have no experience working with the budget committee, but how do we sort of budget? How do we go about budgeting or looking at budgeting just slightly differently once the strategic plan is finalized? So we will allow for a lot more time at our next meeting at that, and we'll bring it up. So time for open discussion, public comments, anything's I guess about what we talked about today, or I'll just open up. I don't follow the Robert's Rules of Orders. I don't know them. I probably should, but we do post everything. We follow most of the rules, but anybody have any comments, questions?
I just have a quick, going back to what Becky was saying, an idea, and I know you want to put that in a different box, but real quick, the Executive Council happens, I believe, twice a year, and that is, it's the president of the board of directors meeting, but is a meeting of the committee chairs together. And
Right.
it might be an excellent opportunity. And it just happened maybe how long ago, Bernie? 6 weeks or something? So it probably won't be again until the fall, but perhaps by the fall, it would be an excellent opportunity to engage the committee chairs in the strategic plan.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's absolutely. And I did give them an update on what the survey was, but it was, I was one of 14 updates, had 5 minutes. And, it's not like our engagement that we had with our conclusions and implications today. So there is an opportunity to work closely with the committees. And again, Jenny, I think you being on both committees really helps. I feel like we are synced up with the communications committee pretty closely, thanks to your efforts. Gary.
I don't know if this is something that this committee should be talking about or not, but one of the issues that's come up several times in other committees is when you're looking at the committee's budget, the budget for the swim club, for golf, for whatever, the budget seems to be arbitrarily set. It doesn't seem to relate to profit and loss. And I'm just wondering if this committee should be looking at what the actual profit and loss of departments are instead of a budget that may be based just on the hopes and wishes of the department. Does anybody else have any experience with, when you look at information that comes out and they say, oh, well, the aquatics department is making money. Well, we're not sure if that's really true because the aquatics may be making more than what was budgeted or less than what was budgeted. But does that budget have anything to do with the real profit and loss? So I'm just wondering if that's something that we should look at.
Frank, do you want to?
Yeah.
Only because you've been on the budget committee.
Yeah, I understand, and I know where you're going on this, but that information is available, and the question should be to John Viola. John Viola controls the budget process, actually. I think I spoke with Bernie about this earlier, that the general manager meets with each department and fees are set, goals are set within each department. And at that point, the budget for the department is reached. As far as amenities go, most all of them this year are profitable. If you look at a direct profit loss, not a profit loss against budget, but a real live profit loss, the amenities have done extremely well. And even over the last several years, if you group all the amenities together, we come out on the positive end. It's not a loss, or the community is not putting up money to keep the amenities going. It is a profit, a little bit of a profit to the entire community. So, but that information is available, and talk to John Viola or request from John Viola exactly, if you have a specific amenity in mind, talk to him about it.
I guess my point more wasn't the fact that I think any of the amenities or any of the departments are losing money. It's just that when the information is presented to the public, it's presented as profit or loss to the budget.
To the budget, exactly.
And although the information may be there to find out what the real profit and loss is, that's not something that is given out as freely as the profit and loss based on the budget. So we're back to the transparency thing. How do we make that more transparent?
Yeah, and I agree with
Or
Gary.
should we even worry about that?
Well, I agree with that. maybe that should be another line in the monthly statements to, to give a baseline to, where the amenities started, what the budget was, were we putting something towards that amenity at the beginning or not? Are they running a direct plus minus from zero, or is there a subsidy to that particular amenity?
Yeah,
Maybe
I
that
think
should be a
that would
separate
help.
line in the monthly evaluation. That's something I think we could recommend and see if it flies.
I agree with Gary as well, and we've actually brought this up once before when there was discussion, and somebody had said, well, the board's transparent, they put out every month, or whatever it is, what the P&L is. And I made the same point that Gary just made, that saying how we're doing relative to budget is really not information that tells you how we're doing relative to what the cost is. And the problem is that probably if we did that, which I think we should, and Frank, as you suggested, put it out there where you can really know the answer. I'm not sure anybody ever looks at it, but I think what happens is when you leave yourself open for criticism, when you present things in a way that the stuff you put out in the front requires somebody to dig into the numbers on the back, even if you have those numbers available someplace.
I agree with that statement. In fact, that the one that interests me the most is golf, because that's my major concern. But this year in golf, from even doing the digging, and I have the opportunity to do some of that digging, that the original number, from what I could tell, was a budget predicted a $50,000 deficit for golf and golf maintenance for the year. And as of right now, we're over $300,000 ahead for the year, which means to me that we're $250,000 ahead for the year. So, but I had to do a lot of digging to even come up with that number, and I'm not 100% sure that number is correct. So, yeah, I think it should be more transparent for all the departments. Another example is the beach parking that gets split up in a couple of different pockets. And it was always, for a long time, it was included with aquatics, but that made aquatics look great. But then when they pulled it out, all of a sudden aquatics didn't look so good anymore. So, yeah, I think that there should be baselines for each department, so we know where they stand, or everybody knows where they stand, not just people who can dig into the actual numbers of everything. So that's where I stand on it.
Thank you, Wes, Frank, Gary. We're gonna continue that discussion in the next meeting. My thoughts are a little bit of, I'll call it a strategic theme. I hear Ocean Pines wants to run more like a business. I mean, I hear that, when I go to different meetings and things like that. In running a business, what do you want to do? You want to drive customer satisfaction, so people, are happy, and you want to make money or break even. So it's this idea of a strategic overview of run more like a business, in all departments, sort of. And I'm not sure how it's all going to fit in, but it's a thought that I have that I haven't fully gelled at this point. Any other comments? It's I believe in starting on time and ending on time. But we'll continue that discussion. That will be a topic as an action item. We'll continue that discussion in our next meeting. Anybody? Next slide then, just to wrap up. So again, we're still in this process of working on those conclusions. We're not ready yet to schedule anything with the board. We want to wrap up these conclusions and implications, but we are going to be getting pretty close to that. And then the next slide, Josh, just next meeting. So our next formal meeting that I'd like you all to attend, we're going to keep it at, our regular, so we're having 2 meetings this month, 3 meetings if you count the town hall. But we're going to, get back to that monthly meeting on the 4th Thursday of every month at 9 a.m. Don't know if it'll be a hybrid yet, whatever, but I am going to, and I know probably everybody can't make it, but I am going to schedule a separate meeting next Thursday at 9 to continue to work on the conclusions and implications. We'll send this deck out. If you can't make it, please send your comments in, your ideas in. But hopefully we'll have a group of 3 to 5 people that we can start hammering out the conclusions and implications for sharing more broadly. So I will be assigning some homework before the next meeting with a little smiley face there on what a goal should be and what's a definition of a goal, because that will be, hopefully we'll get through conclusions and implications before next meeting and start a process of driving our goal. I think all of us have put in, many of us have put in 12 to 16 months on this. So we're trying to continue to move forward in order to meet that budgeting process and get something in front, getting it approved before the board. But great discussion, great meeting. Love all the interaction. And I thank you all, and have a great week. And hopefully we'll get a note out next week and we'll see you all. Thanks.
Thanks, Bernie.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.